And all right, great to see so many of you here today. Thank you all for making the time to come to this information session. My name is Cora Preston. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the network manager for the foundation. My job is to manage the communications for the foundation and to cultivate community within the Switzer network. And today I'm here to manage the Zoom meeting. So if you're having any technical difficulties or you have any accessibility needs that arise, please let me know in the chat and I will try to help. We are recording this meeting and we will share a link to the recording with all of you and post it on our website. In the email that you got from Eventbrite about 10 minutes ago, there's also a link to the slides if it's helpful for you to have those open on your own screen. We will be screen sharing, so you don't have to have them open, but it's available if that's useful for you. I also wanted to share that we will make a $500 contribution to an Indigenous-led organization for this event in alignment with our land acknowledgement commitment. I'll put a link to that in the chat so you can learn more about it if you're interested. And today we're going to hear from Maya Higgins, the Switzer Foundation Program Manager, as well as two Switzer Fellows from the 2024 cohort, Catherine Rogers and Landry Guillen. As we're all talking today, please enter your questions in the chat as they come up. I will read out questions during the Q&A section, and I will try to respond in the chat as well. And now I will pass it over to you, Maya.
Thanks, Cora. Hi, everyone. Excited to see your names and faces on the screen today. I'm Maya. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm based in New Mexico. And I manage our grants and fellowship portions of our program. This is my second year doing the selection process with the foundation. I started, wow, now I should have checked the dates ahead of time, in April of 2024. And I have loved every second with the cohorts that I've gotten to be a part of. And so I'm excited to get to meet some of you as well. So I'm going to share my screen with these slides. For our flow today, I'm going to share a little bit of background information about the foundation and the fellowship program. We'll talk about the application deadline, some really common eligibility questions, and what the selection process looks like. And then I'll pass it over to our fellows who are joining us and ask them a few questions so that they can provide you with a little bit more nuance and a broader context of the Switzer Fellowship. And then we'll open it up to Q&A. So the Switzer Foundation was started in 1986 by Robert and Patricia Switzer with proceeds of the sale from the Dayglow Paint Corporation. And you'll see some remnants of that in the colors used on these slides. The vision of the foundation when it started was to assist graduate students dedicated to applied environmental problem solving and to support them to become leaders capable of tackling emerging and increasingly complex environmental challenges. And that mission still stands today, with the addition of a strong focus on equity and the social impacts of the decisions that we make. So that kind of intersecting with the environmental focus. We have our donor legacy statement on our website and encourage you to look at the history and pathway that we've come on as a foundation. And we now have more than 750 fellows in our network. As part of the fellowship, fellows receive a $17,000 cash award, 2 multi-day in-person retreats, one in the fall and one in the spring, engagement with the larger Switzer network, both during their fellowship year, but also beyond the fellowship year, and then access to other Switzer grant programs at the end of their fellowship year that are focused on building your career. So specifically right now we offer professional development fund grants and then leadership grants, which are larger grants designed to help people who are either making a career pivot or looking for funding to, start something with an organization. You can read about those on our website as well. Our applications are already open, which I'm guessing many of you already know. We post a lot of information on our website, so we really encourage you to look through it. We try to be really clear about what to expect when you're applying. And the application deadline is 11:59 p.m. Pacific on Monday, January 5th of 2026. So a few questions regarding eligibility that we get asked a lot. One is that you must be a U.S. applicant, and what we mean by that is you must be a U.S. citizen, permanent resident, deferred action for childhood arrivals, DACA, recipient, or a refugee according to the definition provided by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. So if you are an international student who is studying in the U.S. and you're interested in applying, unfortunately, you are not eligible for our program. You must also be enrolled in an accredited graduate institution in California or one of the 6 New England states and plan to be enrolled for the entire 2026 to 2027 academic year. If you're in a fully online program, you're not eligible, or say you're in a program that you live in California, but the program's actually accredited in Colorado and you fly to Colorado for a few in-person things, you also would not be eligible. The institution that you're a part of has to be accredited in one of those states. We get a lot of questions about this, so I'll walk through both pathways. If you are a current master's candidate, this is encouraged that you apply if the master's is going to be your terminal degree. If a master's is like a step on the way to the PhD, we encourage you to wait until your PhD to apply. If you're in a 1-year master's program, you probably haven't started yet, and so you can apply now even though you haven't started the program, but you must be formally accepted in the program before your interview, and so you have to be able to show that in the spring. If you're in a 2 years master's program, that means you're probably most likely you've completed 1 semester and you'll apply now and then have a year and a half left. And we encourage you to you must have completed 1 semester in order to apply. So if you're actively applying now for a 2 years master's program and you are not currently enrolled, you won't be eligible to apply until you've completed a semester of coursework. If you are a current PhD candidate, you have to either have 1 or 2 things completed. So either you must have completed 3 years of doctoral work by the time, again, by the start of the fellowship program, so by June of 2026, or you have to plan to have passed your qualifying exams by July 1st of 2026. We get a lot of questions from people who say, like, I'm in my first year of my PhD program, but I already have a master's, so I think I can apply, because master's candidates can apply at this stage. If you are in a PhD program, regardless of if you have a master's or not, these criteria still apply. So either you have to have completed at least 3 years of doctoral work, or you have to have already passed your qualifying exams by the time you start in the fellowship program. We are looking for candidates who have an environmental focus to their research, their studies, and their careers. And so you must have academic and career goals focused on environmental improvement with a strong understanding of social justice. And environmental improvement can look a lot of different ways. We have people working in a lot of different fields: law, public health, policy, research, academia. It really is quite broad. And so there isn't a need to have an academic focus that looks a particular way, but there is a need for you to have a dedicated commitment to applied environmental focus for your career. And you will be asked about that in the application, and it's also a key part of the selection. We post all of our selection criteria on our website, and Cora will share the link to the evaluation rubric. We encourage you to look at that really carefully when you're applying so that you can know ahead of time what we're looking for, and then answer your questions in the essays and short answers and even in the rec letters based on the criteria for the program, and we share that with everyone. For the selection process, we review every single application that comes in. Right now, they're each reviewed by 2 Switzer fellows who volunteered to review applications. We had almost 70 Switzer fellows reviewing applications last year. From the initial process, they will choose 80 fellows to move forward to the second round of selection. In the second round, there's 40 applicants who are reviewed by a team of 2 Switzer fellows in California and 40 that are reviewed by 2 Switzer fellows in New England. And they narrow that down to a recommendation of 20 from each region to go on to the interviews. At the interviews, you will be interviewed by 3 Switzer fellows again. And from there, it will go from 40 candidates to 20 final fellows who are selected, which roughly ends up to be about 10 master's and 10 PhD candidates. You can read all about our current fellows on our website, so you can see sort of what we're looking for and who has been selected most recently. And if you have any questions we don't answer today, you're welcome to email me at maya@switzernetwork.org. And might be that I don't know the answer to your question. And so if that's the case, follow up with me and I will make sure to get back to you. So that is the general overview. I want to introduce you to the Switzer Fellows who are currently on the call because I think they actually probably hold the most useful information for the Q&A today. So I'll introduce Catherine and Landry, and actually I'm going to have them introduce themselves. So we're going to go through a series of questions. Why don't we start with Catherine, and then Landry, you can answer this one second, and then we'll switch for the second question. If you can, I'll put this in the chat so everyone can see it as well. Um, Introduce yourself with your name, pronouns, Switzer year, program, area of study, and what you're doing now. That was a whole lot of things. So
Thank
Catherine,
you.
over to
Thanks,
you.
Maya. And Landry, does it work for me to go first for you? I know you're okay. Yeah, cool. Hi, so nice to see you all. My name is Catherine Rogers. I am currently a fifth year PhD candidate at the Boston University School of Public Health in the Department of Environmental Health. I was a 2024 Switzer Fellow. My pronouns are she, her. Was there anything else, Maya?
I think that's good. Did you say what? Yeah, you said what area of study and what you're doing now. So that's good. Thanks.
Yeah, and then hi everyone. Um, my name is Landry Guillenz. I use she, they pronouns. I'm based in Connecticut but actually calling in today from San Francisco. Um, and I graduated with a Master of Forestry degree with a concentration in urban and community forestry from Yale School of the Environment this past May, and I was a 2024 Switzer Fellow. And now currently I'm working as a forest and natural resource policy specialist for the Society of American Foresters.
Ooh, thanks for navigating that mouthful I just gave you both and so many questions packed into one. I'm hoping that you can share what you would have liked to know as a potential applicant if you were on this call last year or when you were looking to apply. Landry, I'll start with you and then we'll go to Catherine next.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest challenge that I faced when I was applying was what I wanted to share with the sort of selection committee, if that makes sense. How transparent I should be about my journey, how I wanted to basically tell my story. And I was a little bit worried that I would I didn't really want to curate a personality or a persona or anything that didn't feel authentic to me. But also I understand that sometimes in academia that's that happens and you got to do what you got to do. But really luckily I came to the conclusion that I didn't actually want to curate anything that didn't feel reflective of myself and my journey and my experiences and what I was hoping to gain from the network also. So I think overall, I would have liked to know how much the Switzer Foundation, all of the fellows, the selection committee really value authenticity and transparency and really take your whole environmental journey into account when selecting fellows and when reading through applications and everything. That's something that I now know um, and is really reassuring to me. And I hope is will and I hope will be reassuring to you all as well.
Okay, so I think that Maya really spelled out very clearly the things that were maybe I knew about before or when I was submitting my application, but really just want to emphasize them that Um, as a Switzer fellow, you are not only a fellow for 1 year, but then also eligible for professional development funds and eligible for additional support throughout your environmental career. So that was really amazing. And so I applied 2 years in a row. So the first year I was not selected for an interview. And so I did have a bit of a chance to kind of toggle what Landry was just talking about in between the packaging yourself and sharing more about your personal journey and your personal growth. And I will say, even just writing those applications, I'm applying for a job now and I have to submit a leadership statement. And I'm actually going back and reading my applications because I was like, what am I going to say? And so it's actually really helpful. But yeah, but just what Landry was saying, like, I think that you don't, yeah, I didn't feel like I needed to necessarily kind of sell myself in the same way that you might have to, or I guess that's more normally accepted in academia. And I think that that is true of the application process as well as actually as being a fellow and engaging in fellow activities. Yeah, but I think, what would I have liked to know as a potential applicant, like how useful those applications would be to my future self.
Thank you both for sharing that. And I am a big fan of reusing materials and like not reinventing the wheel. And I do find that we hear that a lot, that the reflection process of applying for Switzer is actually a helpful tool for a self-assessing, like what do I want to do, but also a useful tool to look back on, even for nothing else, just as a checkpoint of like, oh, do I still want to do the same things? Like, where is the thread and what's important to me? Okay, our next question is, how has the fellowship impacted you so far? So Catherine, I'll start with you this time.
Thanks. The fellowship it's impacted me in several ways. I would say, first and foremost, it has impacted my kind of my network, right? The people who I know. There's a very active email listserv among the fellows where people are sharing job opportunities. People are requesting and offering to read each other's application materials. I did take the foundation up on its, you call it career service, mentoring, career coaching, with Sarah Reed, the executive director, and then had some follow-up conversations with her. So I think in a very kind of, I suppose it's all, kind of career job oriented ways, I think it has led to lots more conversations and opportunities. So that's been very cool. And then I think, in the retreats that the foundation holds that Maya and Cora run, I think those are also really awesome as far as really honing in on your interests, honing in on your story, and honing in on like your leadership style and what has informed that. Which are also just really awesome things to know about yourself. But yeah, I think, oh, and I didn't say it, but there's also kind of like network get-togethers that have also been really helpful, where I've like met fellows who are not from my year, but who live in the same town as me, like live a few blocks away. And it's really awesome to know that I can call on those people as I'm in the position of looking for a job. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, definitely amplifying what Catherine said about my network. And also to add, it does feel, it is a professional academic network, but it also does feel like a personal sort of network as well. I did my bachelor's degree in California, lived in California my whole life, and then came to New England for my master's degree. So I knew a bunch of people from undergrad in California, but no one else who was doing any sort of graduate degrees in California. So that was one thing that was super cool to me because I have this really strong connection to California, plan to move back to California, and knowing that there are so many other Switzer fellows also there is really exciting to me. And then also including the fellows that are in my cohort, or mine and Catherine's cohort, the 2024 fellows. I feel like I know so many more people that are in so many different places and doing really great work, that I honestly don't see any other way I would have connected with them if it weren't for the fellowship. So getting to meet everyone both in my cohort and across other generations, years, classes of cohorts has been really, really special. Um, and then also just knowing the post fellowship opportunities that exist also for professional development and sort of career related resources that the network provides is something that I really appreciate and definitely plan to utilize in the future, and is something that um, yeah, I just again appreciate being able to have access to, and um, helps me at least feel really supported in whatever direction I plan to take my career in.
Awesome. Thank you both. And the last question before we open it up to general Q&A is, what is the top piece of advice you would give to Switzer Fellowship applicants? Like, for example, the folks on this call. Landry, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think and this was sort of an answer to my previous question, but um, just being able to speak about, at least in my own application, how my different identities impacted my academic, professional, personal journey, and how those led me to wanting to pursue an environmental degree and career, was something that I initially felt kind of intimidated of, but also recognized it was a really necessary part of my story and my journey, and what I hope to do in the work that I pursue, um, slash the work that I'm doing now. So if I could give you any advice, it would be to um, be authentic to yourself as a person, as an academic, as a professional, um, and know that the committee, Switzer Fellows, they all really value all the different parts of you that come into this application.
Yeah, and I think those are excellent pieces of advice. And in addition, I'm just thinking about my own um, application process. And I think the difference between my application in the first year, where I was not selected for an interview, and then my second application was that I reached out to previous fellows. So in addition to going to conversations like this, where it's an information session, I think I really benefited from having a one-on-one conversation from previous with previous Switzer fellows to talk about what their experience was and to really understand, okay, this is what the fellowship is really about. And this is what I would be expected to contribute and bring to the table. So I think that was really helpful. I'm very happy to offer up my email. I can put it in the chat if anyone wants to reach out to have a one-on-one conversation. I mean, we still have another half hour where we can talk, it's open-ended questions. But in any case, I just thought that was really helpful. Yeah.
Oh, I will also add, Catherine sparked something. In terms of advice for actual application writing, I'm a big believer in bad first drafts, and I really leaned into that for this application. And as soon as it opened, I read through the questions, like the personal statement and supplemental questions, and I just kind of stream of consciousness wrote down everything I was thinking, and then I put it away for like 2 weeks, and then I came back to it and edited it a little bit and put it away and asked my friends to read it, and kept returning to it. And I think that really helped me make it the essay and the story that I wanted it to be. And also helped me not feel so overwhelmed when the deadline was approaching, because I was putting a little bit of time into it over, a couple months, I guess. And I thought that ended up being really, really helpful to me to just have different iterations and not expect the first, honestly, for me, like the first 3 drafts to be perfect, because they weren't.
Those are great pieces of advice. And Cora put this in the chat, but if you want to talk to a Switzer fellow, and you want to talk to, you're definitely welcome to reach out to Catherine. But also if you want to just be connected to another Switzer fellow in the network and you don't know of anyone, there's a form you can fill out where you can request to be connected with a Switzer fellow. And we have fellows in the network who have volunteered to talk one-on-one with applicants and give, their perspective. And so you're welcome to sign up that way as well. And we would love to connect you with someone who can answer your questions. Well, I want to transition us into your questions now, so this can be meaningful and useful for you all. If you have a question, please put it in the chat. And if you want a specific person's response, you're welcome to direct the question. And if not, Cora will sort of read the question and then call on one of us to respond. And if we don't answer it fully, you're welcome to put another question in the chat or let us know and we'll expand more.
All right, we have a couple questions coming in. Thanks for everyone for putting those into the chat. Let's start with the first one that came in. In what ways have you two used the network so far? Let's start with Landry and then go to Catherine.
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, I'm a big follower of the listserv. They're always present, past fellows asking questions, amplifying different applications, things like that. So I love being able to read that there's not a set amount of time that things come in, but whenever anything comes in, I'm excited to read what fellows are asking about and what they're posting in there. And then also I've utilized, I would say, probably one of the most, I can't think of a good word for it. But one of my favorite opportunities in the fellowship was our cross cohort gathering that we had earlier this spring, where we all got to meet fellows from different years, starting in maybe like the 80s, maybe 80s, 90s. So it really had a broad range of people at very different stages in their career, who are all there to connect and reconnect. And so, yeah, just the kind of cross cohort connections that I've made have also been really helpful, because I get to hear from folks who are further along in their careers than me, but still do the type of work that I hope to do. And that's been really great.
Okay, I'm going to be really specific, because I'm kind of a literal person and I like specifics. But the first time that I really used the network was I sent an email to the listserv and I said, "Hi, I'm planning to submit a public comment around this administrative rule earlier this year under the Trump administration that would remove basically environmental assessments from like building projects, like from siting infrastructure, like a siting kind of rule." This is pretty out of my wheelhouse, but felt like it was important. And I said, "Hi, does anyone have any expertise on this? Does anyone want to help me work on this?" And someone responded, and we had this great back and forth. I feel like I learned a lot and wrote a much stronger letter with their support. Okay, so there's like a really specific example. And then I think, secondly, like Landry said, I definitely follow the listserv, follow links. And then also when I helped organize an in-person gathering for people in the Boston area, Boston-ish area. And that was just amazing to talk to different people about. Everyone was kind of in the same boat, right? Having jobs or maybe like graduating and thinking like, oh my gosh, in this world, what are we going to do? And just kind of like, normalizing that a little bit and honestly thinking a little bit more like adding some flexibility to my career path, which I have seen as kind of one thing, and willing to be open and see like, okay, well, people might have taken detours on the way to meet their goal, and maybe you have to be a little flexible. So that's really specific examples.
Thank you both. We have another really practical question that is, how did you prepare for the interviews? Catherine, do you want to go first?
Yes, I am trying to think back. I think you can Google common interview questions, and I think I did that. And I typed out answers, and I thought about how I would respond. To be honest, I don't remember. I don't remember what the interview questions were. I think I had prepared some like ideas and some responses, but again, as Landry said, I think I just kind of also leaned into being authentic, talking about myself.
Yeah, I didn't actually look up questions, but um I wrote on a sticky note like four main things that I knew I wanted to be able to talk about, just so I didn't forget, because I, interviews can be intimidating, and sometimes the thing I want to talk about most completely slips my mind. So my little sticky note with like four things about uh, myself slash why Switzer, I wrote down so I could have it for reference just in case, and I found that to be really helpful. And then I also spoke to a previous Switzer fellow that was at my university many years removed, um, and just kind of basically asked like, should I be scared? Should I be nervous? And was really reassured by their response. And the answer is no, you should not be scared or nervous. Yeah, so talking to previous Switzer fellows and also writing down a couple of things that I knew I wanted to talk about.
Those are both great answers. Another thing I've heard that other fellows have done is they have practiced with a friend. So have your friend role play with you, and just get a few reps under your belt so that it's not the first time you're doing it. We have another question about how did you hear about the fellowship? And do you have any advice on looking out for other fellowship or funding opportunities?
Yeah, I found out about it through my university's listserv. I relied pretty heavily on that, and yeah, I think that was my biggest thing. So if you have any sort of communications department in your university or the university you're planning to apply to, I'd say subscribing to that is really helpful.
So I found out about it through a class project. My first year of my PhD program, we had to write a proposal, and there were lots of like government organizations identified, like NSF, NIH. Switzer was a foundation that was listed. Um, and so again, I guess that resource came to me through my university, but I don't know about other foundations like Switzer, to be honest. I still don't.
I can share that some of the colleges and universities publicly post a list of fellowship programs. I know one of them that does, or at least used to last year, University of Vermont. I can't remember the exact link to it, but in their graduate learn to apply section, there's a section about how to fund your studies there, and then they link you to a whole Google sheet with a whole bunch of fellowships and sources of funding. Those are obviously more specific, some of them to Vermont and New England, but it's worth looking around because there are people who have compiled lists of resources, and those are publicly available.
Great. And the next question, I'm going to generalize a little bit because we had a question. The question reads, have there been fellowships awarded to archaeological research? And I'm not sure. And I don't think any of us on the call right now know that specifically. But if you're curious about a particular discipline or topic, you can search on our fellowship directory using a keyword. So you don't just have to type in a fellow's name into the search bar. You can type in a keyword like archaeology or government or whatever you want to write in there to see if there are fellows that come up, and that will search everything in the fellows profile on our website, so you can get a sense of what if there's a particular keyword you're looking for. And there's also drop down menus to search for based on university, fellowship year, region, expertise, which are kind of like random groupings of things that we've lumped fellows into. But you can look at all the fellows that are that have experience in coastal and marine conservation or policy and law. You can look at any kinds of different expertise areas or sectors of work like academia, government, nonprofit, etc. So that's a resource if you're looking to find out if there is a history of fellows in a similar discipline to you. And I will also encourage you to apply if your career goals are related to the environment, because we're not necessarily focused on like your project right now or your discipline. We're focused on what do you want to do with your degree to make a difference for the environment and for equity. And so those things are pieces that are the most important. It's less important what discipline you're in as to what you want to do with that. I also saw in reference to our last question that someone's sharing some other suggestions for places to find funding in the chat. So feel free to share resources with each other while you're on this call. Maya, anything you want to add about that question about disciplines? Okay. And there was another question about, is there a limit to the number of times you can apply? No, there's not a limit to the number of times you can apply other than the eligibility criteria that Maya went over. So you have to be within that eligibility criteria and whenever you are applying. PhD candidates usually have more opportunities to apply than master's candidates. If you're a master's candidate, you probably only have one opportunity to apply unless it's a longer master's program. Great, we have another question for Landry and Catherine, and it's in the application. It asks about what can you contribute to the Switzer network? Would you mind sharing, if you remember, your response or how it may have changed since then compared to how are you contributing to the network now? Landry, do you want to go first? I picked on Catherine last time to go first. So.
Yeah. Very honestly, I don't remember what I said. But for context of what maybe you could answer, I think it would be, answers can range from what you would personally bring to the network, what maybe perspectives you would bring to the network, what expertise. It's I think really open to interpretation from my understanding. What I would answer now is being able to connect people where I can, when I know that I have a person in my life who wants to do XYZ. I go look into the network directory or I immediately think of someone from my cohort, and I'm able to connect them to one another for professional or academic purposes. And that's been really great. I love being able to connect people and provide resources to people
Catherine, what would you add to how do you?
Okay.
Mhm.
So again, I'm not exactly sure what I said, but what I think I said and what is probably still true is that my passion is really is really science translation. It's really connecting research to policy, and that could be legislative, administrative rules, testimony. So I have experience doing that, and that is my passion. I think that's probably what I said, and I think that is probably still true today. Um, yeah, and I think in addition, it's just kind of like now that I'm in the 5th year of my PhD program, I could probably talk more about like navigating a PhD program.
Thank you. We had another question. This one also got a thumbs up from someone else too about, can you please talk a bit about the balance between emphasizing leadership and environmental commitment in your fellowship writing? And while Landry and Catherine think about that a little bit, I will also share that in the FAQs on our website, one of them is a question about like, what does leadership potential really mean? Are you looking for someone who is looking to develop their leadership or is already a strong leader? And our answer to that question is both. You can come at that from either perspective. So that's just another something that I will add and encourage everyone to really read all those FAQs because they're very helpful. Catherine, do you want to take a stab at this one?
Sure, I can answer that because I actually have my application open right now as I'm writing a separate leadership statement. So I can say that I probably about half of the content for my Switzer application is focused on leadership. So I think I started my application talking about my commitment and my passion, which I already just said what it was. and then talked about examples where I've done that or invited other people to do that with me, kind of through different examples of environmental health, essentially. So I kind of tried to weave it through there. I can say in my first comparing this to my first application. In my first application, I did not provide a lot of leadership examples. I kind of let those stand alone in my resume. So I would definitely recommend spelling them out in a more narrative form.
Andrew, what would you add?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much else to add to that. I think Catherine had a really great response. Um, I I also went and tried to pull up my application too, so I have it in front of me now for future questions. Um, but I think the way that I navigated it, similarly to Catherine, was weaving throughout the narrative. Um, and also I tried not to repeat anything that I had mentioned in a previous question, if that makes sense. So if I had already spoken at length about leadership, then I used another question to speak more about environmental commitment or how they both overlap, interconnect.
Great answers. Thank you. Maya also shared in the chat that from like a scoring perspective, they're scored equally. So you can look at that scoring criteria on our evaluation rubric, which we've linked in the chat. And then there's a question here that says, I was wondering if there was a preference for fellows' research focus or fieldwork to be based where they are accredited, or are global or other regional interest areas considered? And I can answer that question. It does not matter where your research is or fieldwork is based. It does not have to be in your region as long as you have like a compelling story around it. And then the next question. This question I will I'm wondering if Maya will have anything to contribute to this one, or if just Landry and Catherine want to answer it. But the question is, how do you balance some parts of your application that are stronger than others? For example, if you're really strong in your leadership roles, but have less experience in social justice, how does that affect both your ranking and how you apply? And as far as your ranking, I would again encourage you to look at that rubric. Um, and like things on the rubric are not necessarily like weighted more than each other. They're all looked at. Um, Landry, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, yeah. So I think I would say that if not having experience or as much experience in something is definitely okay. Um, you also might be able to speak to what you hope to gain in that area, how the network could help you, how your cohort could help you, or what you plan to do sort of in your graduate school journey to help you get more experience and learn more about social, or as the example, like social justice.
Catherine, would you add anything?
No, I think I just want to emphasize that. I think if you have even if you are, say you don't have as much leadership experience for one reason or another, but you know what you want that to look like, and you have examples of goals that you have or leaders that you've worked with who you want to emulate, I think that's also really good to highlight.
And specifically, just because this question comes up often around social justice, it's good if you can show us that you are aware of the social justice implications of your work, even if you're not directly working in a social justice based framework. That's okay. In the rubric, it's much more looking at like what is your perspective on the impacts of your work for the environment and for social justice. And we also are really supporting environmental leaders in a broad umbrella. So some people that are in a cohort tend to be emerging leaders who are newer to gaining a lot of experience. And some people have been in a career for a long time, went back and made a pivot, and then are like changing what leadership direction they want to go in. And both of those people are really welcome in the cohort. And so, like Landry, I heard say really clearly at the beginning, the best thing that you can do is be really authentic for yourself in each section of the criteria of like what you hope to bring, what you hope to gain, where you're at. And the clearer your vision is for yourself, the stronger your application will stand out, because we're not looking for someone who checks all the boxes. It's more like how clear is your vision for applied environmental impact, and how will the Switzer Fellowship and Network support that in the future?
Thank you. The next question is, what does the fellowship year look like once you've come back from the retreat? So Maya, could you just sort of lay out the kind of like arc of the fellowship year for folks?
Yeah, so the fellowship, I guess it pre-starts when you're accepted in May, but it doesn't officially start until June when your first round of funding is delivered. After that, we prep for the fall retreat, which is typically in September. So at the beginning, it's just sort of getting oriented to the Switzer network and preparing for the fall retreat. We attend the fall retreat together, and when folks come back from that, usually there is some like within the cohort like communication in a variety of forms, like a signal group chat, or people might connect over email or text, depending on how they connected at that retreat. And we offer coaching during that time over the winter and actually beyond for the whole time folks are part of the Switzer network. We can support with coaching on a variety of things that folks are looking for support around. And we also host a virtual gathering for everyone in December so that everyone can touch base and connect again. The second retreat tends to be the end of February, beginning of March. And that retreat tends to have a few more touch points with folks from other cohorts as well. And after that retreat, there is a like mini virtual celebration sort of to wrap up graduations for a lot of people and the end of the fellowship year. That tends to happen around June. So those are like the official like Switzer hosted programming pieces. But alongside of that whole experience, the fellows are part of the overall network. And so, like Catherine shared, she hosted an event in Boston, and you can attend all different network gatherings that happen. We do a lot of virtual training and other programs as well. We try to connect people that want to connect and work together within the network. So there's kind of a constant, I heard someone describe it as like, this is probably a terrible analogy, but a faucet that's just like constantly dripping. Like the Switzer network is just like constantly present. And for whenever you want to turn the water on, you're like, oh, the water's still running. Okay, it's still dripping. And you get to like choose how much you want to like be like, okay, I'm going in. I'm gonna like really turn the water on and I'm gonna be all in on Switzer right now. Or if you're like really all consumed with other things, you can just attend those retreats and then plug back in after you graduate. It's really the goal is for it to be a lifelong network and support you in a way that works for you in your leadership journey.
Thanks, Maya. I'll also add that we offer programming that's open to the entire Switzer network and current fellows. So, during like Landry mentioned, that cross-cohort community call that we had in October, and many current fellows attended that, which was about a month after their fall retreat. And so that was a way for them to get to know other fellows in the network that aren't in their cohort, just like Landry was talking about. And then those remain available throughout your entire fellowship year and beyond. Catherine, is there anything you would want to add about kind of like what the fellowship year looked like for you outside of the retreats?
I think I've already
Okay.
said, I think in my context, right, I'm looking for a job now. I'm on the job market. So I'm using it primarily for that reason at the moment.
Landry, anything else you would want to add?
No, I don't think so.
Great. We had a question that was about how do you show work experience if you haven't had like outside of academia professional experience because you've been in academia throughout your environmental journey. And something that I would encourage you to do in this case is to emphasize the like leadership or like professional related experiences that you have had during your academic year, like whether that's being a TA or internships or like practical pieces of your graduate degree. It doesn't have to, it could be student employment at a lab or something, but, really making those connections of how has your academic journey impacted you and where do you plan to go with that would be where I would encourage you to go in that case. Landry, anything to add to that?
No, but same thing. And I would also add in maybe like any volunteer work you've done too.
Yeah.
That's also work. But yeah, internships, TAs, anything you're doing that's not just a class, I think is good to know.
Catherine, anything you would add?
I agree with that. And I think, once you stop and think about it for a second, you realize you're like, oh, I'm actually managing a dissertation committee or a thesis committee. Like you have more management experience in academia than I think you normally think about. But if you're working in a lab group, if you're working in any type of group setting, you're going to have something to say, I'm sure.
Thank you. I'm just going to skim through where we're coming up to the end of our hour. So I'm just going to take a moment to kind of look through the questions that we have coming through. But one question I will ask Maya, someone asked, are part-time students eligible? I wanted to make sure I got that right before replying.
I believe part-time students are eligible. That's like taking my brain a second to confirm, but I believe part-time students are eligible as long as they're at an accredited institution in California or New England.
Great, thank you. And then we have another eligibility question about eligibility for PhD students. I see that you answered that in the chat, but do you just want to verbally explain that for anyone who's listening to the recording?
Yeah, one of the questions was about which qualifying exams do you need to have passed? And that one I am not sure of, so I will have to follow up over email. But the second one was, what if you haven't passed your qualifying exams at the time you apply? And that's okay, as long as you have passed them by July 1st, 2026. So a lot of people apply and haven't passed them yet, and then take their qualifying exams in May or sometime in the spring, and that's absolutely okay.
Thank you. This is a question, and we can start with Landry for this one. How were you able to succinctly discuss and choose parts of your journey to write about?
Yeah, I mean, I think I just chose to speak about what I also knew that Switzer stated that they valued. So their values of social justice, their values of leadership in the environmental space. Those are two very clearly expressed values, and I chose like a couple examples of my commitment to each of those to be able to speak about at length more. I will say I think I also chose to do less and speak about them more as opposed to listing a lot of different things. So that maybe answers your question.
Yeah, Catherine, go ahead.
I agree with focusing on a few things focusing on a few things that align with what the fellowship rubric, right? What Switzer is looking for. And I think I chose parts of my journey that appeared to be consistent in telling a story, and that I was able to be that I had some action associated with. So, for example, I am from Florida, and I could, write about the destruction of the natural environment in Florida and what that means and what that looks like and documented, and how that's documented. However, I didn't write about that in my application. I wrote about like work that I was involved with, that I was I should say more deeply involved with. So for that reason, does that make sense? It's kind of like that was part of my maybe like more environmental career journey.
Yeah, that does make sense. Thank you. Um, let's see. We had a couple questions that were about like discipline or focus area of your research. And like I said earlier, like it's our focus is not really on the discipline that you're in. And so we have a wide variety of disciplines that we have funded. And so someone asked if there are social scientists in the network. Yes. Someone asked if there are fellowships awarded to folks working on wildlife conservation. Yes. I think, and a nuance to that wildlife conservation question was, are human focused projects favored? And no, they're not favored, but you do still need to talk about your awareness of the equity impact of your work. So, wildlife conservation is going to have human equity impacts. And so demonstrating your awareness of those kinds of things is important as well, even if it's not human focused work. And then there was also a question about what kind of information did you include on your resume? And Landry shared that she submitted a standard one-page resume. We have some information about this on the FAQs on our website as well. And just encourage you not to do a big CV, but to do a like professional kind of one single or double-sided page like resume as opposed to a really long CV. And we are at our hour. If we did not get a chance to answer your question, or if you have more questions that come to mind, please email us. You can also use that form that's on our website and in the chat to get connected with a Switzer Fellow. Catherine is going to sign off, but she put her email address in there in the chat for anyone who was on the call today and wants to reach out to Catherine. Maya, do you have anything that you want to say to close us out?
No, I guess just to say, feel free to email us with more questions. We wish you good luck, and welcome the really bad drafts, as Landry shared, in this part of the process. We won't review them, but we encourage you to write them for yourselves. I do think that's helpful as part of the process, and just want to stress again to be yourself in the application. I personally am not part of the selection. I don't review applications, but what I hear from everyone who is a part of it that stands out is people that they really feel are authentic from the application side of things all the way through the interview. So be yourself and tell your story.
Landry, anything you want to say? Just waving.
Oh, yeah, no, that was it. Thanks you everyone for joining, and also good luck.
Great. Thank you all so much for being here. Good luck with your applications, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your fall.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.